The ballroom fell silent as Naomi's trembling fingers gripped the microphone, her 8-month pregnant belly illuminated under the spotlight like a target. 300 of the state's most powerful elites watched, champagne flutes poised at their lips, hungry for the humiliation about to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lucas Grant announced, his politician smile never reaching his eyes, "my ex-wife has prepared a special performance for us tonight." His new bride, the governor's daughter, shifted uncomfortably beside him, diamond earrings catching the light as Lucas's hand squeezed her shoulder too tightly. The room rippled with cruel anticipation. They all knew the story. How rising star Senate candidate Lucas had discarded Naomi when her pregnancy threatened his carefully crafted image. How he'd left her broke and broken while parading his replacement at fundraisers. What they didn't know was that Naomi's shaking wasn't from fear. It was rage, cold, calculated, and weaponized. As the pianist struck the first chord, Naomi locked eyes with Lucas across the sea of tables. For a split second, his smirk faltered at the unfamiliar look in her gaze. Gone was the devastated woman he'd expected. In her place stood someone dangerous, someone with nothing left to lose. "A song about truth," she announced, her voice steady despite her trembling body. "About a man who buys loyalty with cash from offshore accounts. About Hotel Marseille, room 412, May 15th. Lucas's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the floor as the blood drained from his face. Naomi's lips curled into the barest smile as she began to sing, each lyric a dagger aimed at the secrets he thought were buried. This wasn't the performance he demanded. This was an execution, and somewhere in the crowd, the federal agent who'd been hunting Lucas Grant for years pressed record, collecting every damning word from the woman they'd spent months preparing for this very moment. If you're new to this channel, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next twist. 6 months earlier, Naomi Walker had stood in a different kind of spotlight, the harsh fluorescence of her doctor's office as Lucas paced like a caged animal. High-risk pregnancy, the obstetrician had explained, concern etched across her face. Bed rest for the remainder of the term. Lucas had remained silent during the drive home, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. That night, Naomi had found him in his study, campaign documents spread across his desk. "The timing is impossible," he'd said without looking up. "The primaries are in 4 months. I can't have a pregnant wife on bed rest when I'm supposed to be campaigning as the energetic family values candidate. It's our child, Lucas," Naomi had whispered, one hand protectively covering her belly. His laugh had been cold, unfamiliar. "Is it? We both know you were emotional after that fight in December. You disappeared for hours." The accusation had stolen her breath. "I went to my mother's grave. You know that." But Lucas Grant had built his career on creating convenient narratives, and within a week, divorce papers had appeared on their kitchen counter alongside a pathetic settlement offer. 2 weeks after that, he'd been photographed with Catherine Hammond, daughter of Governor Hammond, and his ticket to political connections Naomi could never provide. What Lucas hadn't considered was what made Naomi valuable beyond her role as supportive politician's wife. Her master's degree in forensic accounting and the 3 years she'd spent working for the state attorney's office before Lucas convinced her to quit and support his career full-time. What Lucas had forgotten was that Naomi had been the one balancing their books, filing their taxes, managing the household accounts, seeing every transaction, every unexplained cash withdrawal, every suspicious deposit. And what Lucas couldn't possibly know was that Catherine Hammond's father had been building a case against political corruption for years, targeting candidates who crossed ethical lines. That Governor Hammond had recognized Lucas as a predator in their midst, or that when Naomi had reached her lowest point, evicted from their home, prenatal vitamins in a paper bag, sleeping on her friend Mia's couch, a discreet message had arrived from the governor's office. "Ms. Walker, thank you for coming." Governor Hammond hadn't risen from behind his imposing desk when Naomi had entered his office 4 months ago, her pregnancy just beginning to show. "What I'm about to discuss requires absolute discretion." FBI Special Agent Carter had done most of the talking, explaining their suspicions about Lucas's campaign financing, about kickbacks from developers seeking rezoning approvals, about evidence that wasn't quite enough for an indictment. "We need someone who can connect the dots," Agent Carter had said, her sharp eyes assessing Naomi. "Someone who knows where the bodies are buried. Why would I help you? Naomi had asked, hands protectively cradling her belly. Governor Hammond had finally spoken. Because my daughter doesn't know the man she's marrying. Because I won't let another woman's life be destroyed by Lucas Grant. When they'd shown her the photos, Lucas with the developer's daughter months before their separation, the same woman hospitalized after a suspicious fall, Naomi's heart had hardened into something unrecognizable. The Lucas she'd loved had been a carefully constructed fiction. The real man was someone who hurt women, who abandoned them when they became inconvenient. What exactly do you need me to do? She'd asked. Agent Carter had smiled. We need you to sing. Now, as Naomi stood on the wedding reception stage, the months of preparation crystallized into perfect clarity. The FBI had created the opportunity, suggesting to Lucas through intermediaries that having his pregnant ex-wife perform would showcase his compassion and modern approach to family. Voters eat that kind of thing up, the campaign advisor they planted had assured him. It shows magnanimity. Lucas, ever conscious of optics, had demanded Naomi's presence with thinly veiled threats about custody arrangements once the baby was born. He'd expected her to refuse, giving him ammunition for future legal battles, or to appear and humiliate herself, reinforcing his narrative of her instability. What he hadn't expected was her calm acceptance. What he couldn't know was how she'd spent those months meticulously documenting every financial irregularity from their marriage. How she'd worked with federal prosecutors to craft lyrics that would serve as both public confession and admissible evidence. As Naomi continued her song, Lucas's initial shock transformed into dawning horror. The room's atmosphere shifted from voyeuristic anticipation to uncomfortable recognition as specific dates and dollar amounts filled her haunting melody. 300,000, wired offshore, the night you met with Johnson by the shore. Catherine's father, the governor, watched from a corner table, his face impassive but eyes alert. 3 tables away, Agent Carter disguised as a wedding guest touched her earpiece discreetly, confirming the recording quality was pristine. Room 412 where she fell, her silence bought for 80 grand by morning's bell. Lucas lurched to his feet, his newly minted marriage ring catching the light. She's unwell, he announced to the increasingly unsettled crowd. Pregnancy hormones. Her doctors warned us about delusions. His voice died as the projection screen behind Naomi, intended for a montage of the happy couple, flickered to life with images of bank statements, text messages, hotel receipts. This is slander, Lucas shouted, but his eyes betrayed recognition of his own handwriting, his own signature. Catherine rose slowly beside him, removing his grasping hand from her arm with deliberate precision. Lucas, she said, voice carrying in the now silent ballroom. What is she talking about? Naomi's voice strengthened with each verse, her hand drifting to her belly where her child, their child, kicked as if in encouragement. The initial trembling in her fingers had vanished, replaced by a calm certainty. The 15th of May, when promises died, while your future bride thought you stood by her side. Lucas's face contorted with rage as he finally understood. This wasn't random vindictiveness. This was methodical destruction. Each lyric corresponded to documents already in federal possession, each melody a key unlocking testimony from witnesses already secured. He lunged toward the stage, but 2 wedding guests intercepted him, men who shed their formal demeanor to reveal the federal agents beneath. Lucas Grant, the taller one announced, loud enough for the horrified guests to hear, "You're under arrest for wire fraud, campaign finance violations, and obstruction of justice." As Naomi sang the final verse, a lyrical recitation of the account numbers where embezzled campaign funds were hidden, Lucas's gaze locked with hers across the chaos of the ballroom. In that moment, he finally saw her, not as the adoring wife he'd discarded or the inconvenient ex he'd sought to humiliate, but as the formidable woman who had been watching, recording, remembering all along. The woman who had turned his greatest weapon against him. His voice. What shocking evidence will Naomi reveal next? Will Catherine stand by her disgraced groom or become an unexpected ally? Comment your predictions below and subscribe if you are new to this channel. Chaos erupted across the ballroom as Lucas fought against the handcuffs, his perfect politician's facade crumbling into raw fury. "This is a setup," he shouted, eyes wild as cameras flashed. The same society photographers he'd invited to document his perfect wedding now capturing his downfall. Naomi, you vindictive bitch. You planned this. Agent Carter stepped forward, her wedding guest disguise abandoned as she flashed her badge. Mr. Grant, anything you say can and will be used against you. Lucas lunged toward Naomi, dragging his captors forward a step before they restrained him. I'll destroy you for this. You think you'll get my child? I'll make sure you never. That's enough. A commanding voice cut through the commotion. Governor Hammond stood, his authoritative presence immediately calming the room. Take him out the back. No need to give him more of an audience than he's already had. As the agents escorted a still struggling Lucas from the ballroom, Naomi remained on stage, one hand braced against the microphone stand, the other cradling her belly. The spotlight felt suddenly too hot, too exposed, now that her task was complete. Hundreds of shocked faces stared back at her. Judges, donors, political kingmakers, all processing what they'd just witnessed. Catherine Hammond stood frozen at the head table, her wedding gown a cruel reminder of the celebration that had transformed into a criminal investigation. When their eyes met across the room, Naomi expected hatred from the bride. Instead, she saw something unexpected: relief. A sharp pain radiated across Naomi's abdomen, stealing her breath. Not now, she thought desperately. It's too early. Ms. Walker, are you all right? Agent Carter was suddenly beside her, supporting her elbow as Naomi swayed slightly. Contraction, Naomi whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. Probably just Braxton Hicks. But as she stepped away from the microphone, a warm gush of fluid soaked through her dress, puddling at her feet. The timing couldn't have been more dramatic if she'd planned it. Her water breaking in front of 300 witnesses, minutes after her ex-husband's arrest. Her water broke, someone shouted, and the ballroom erupted into renewed chaos. Through the commotion, Catherine Hammond approached the stage, her white gown and Lucas's arrest creating a surreal tableau. My car is waiting outside, she said quietly to Agent Carter. The hospital is 4 minutes away. Before Naomi could process this unexpected alliance, another contraction seized her, stronger than the first. The room began to spin as monitors were forgotten, federal evidence secured, and her carefully constructed composure finally cracked under the strain. Stay with us, Naomi, Agent Carter urged as medics rushed in. Your part is done. Focus on your baby now. As they wheeled her toward the exit, Naomi caught a final glimpse of the ruined wedding. Crystal centerpieces glittering under chandeliers, abandoned champagne flutes, the giant wedding cake untouched. Lucas's political future destroyed alongside his marriage, all in less than 15 minutes. Push, Naomi, Dr. Reeves urged 3 hours later in the delivery room. One more big push. The pain transcended anything Naomi had imagined, but she channeled the same determination that had carried her through months of secret cooperation with federal investigators. Her fingers gripped the hospital bed rails as she bore down with the last of her strength. It's a boy, the doctor announced as the newborn's angry cries filled the room. A healthy baby boy. Tears streamed down Naomi's face as they placed her son on her chest. Tiny, perfect, and completely innocent of the circumstances surrounding his dramatic entrance into the world. Hello, James, she whispered, the name she'd chosen to honor her late father. You have terrible timing, but perfect execution. A soft knock on the door interrupted the moment. Agent Carter entered, her formal attire exchanged for casual clothes, her expression softer than Naomi had ever seen it. Congratulations, she said, approaching the bed cautiously. How are you feeling? Like I just gave birth and sent my ex-husband to prison on the same night, Naomi replied with exhausted honesty. Any updates? Lucas is in federal custody. No bail hearing until Monday. Agent Carter hesitated. There's someone who'd like to see you, if you're up for it. Before Naomi could respond, Catherine Hammond appeared in the doorway, still in her wedding dress, though she'd removed the veil and elaborate jewelry. The sight was so incongruous, a bride in a maternity ward, that Naomi almost laughed despite her exhaustion. I know this is unusual, Catherine began, remaining by the door, but I needed to thank you. Naomi shifted slightly, protective instincts flaring as she cradled James closer. Thank me. My father suspected Lucas wasn't what he seemed, but I wouldn't listen. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. 2 weeks ago, I found bruises on my assistant's wrist after she delivered documents to Lucas. When I confronted him, he had explanations, as always. Understanding dawned on Naomi. He heard her. Catherine nodded. I was going to call off the wedding this morning, but my father convinced me to wait. He said sometimes justice requires perfect timing. Her gaze shifted to the newborn. I didn't understand until I saw you on that stage. The revelation hung between them, that Governor Hammond had orchestrated not just Lucas's arrest, but the specific timing of it, ensuring maximum public impact. Your father used us both, Naomi said quietly. He protected us both, Catherine countered. Lucas would have hurt more women, would have hurt your son eventually. The truth of this settled heavily on Naomi as she looked down at James, peacefully sleeping against her chest. She had participated in the sting to secure evidence, to ensure Lucas faced consequences for his financial crimes. But she had never considered the broader impact, that she might have protected other women from experiencing what she had. The press is already calling, Agent Carter interjected. Your performance has gone viral. Lucas's entire political network is scrambling to distance themselves. I don't want my son's birth associated with scandal, Naomi said firmly. Which is why I'm here, Catherine replied, finally stepping fully into the room. I have a proposal, one that might benefit us both in the aftermath of tonight's events. As Catherine outlined her unexpected suggestion, Naomi realized that the inciting incident of Lucas's arrest wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a much more complicated chapter. Joint exclusive interview, Catherine repeated, perching carefully on the edge of the hospital visitor's chair, her wedding dress pooling around her. You and me, together, telling our stories on our terms. Naomi shifted baby James to her other arm, eyeing the governor's daughter skeptically. Why would you want to be associated with this scandal? With me? Because the vultures are already circling, Catherine replied. By noon tomorrow, they'll have created their own narrative. The spurned ex-wife and the humiliated bride will be reduced to victims or villains in Lucas's story. Agent Carter leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Catherine's right. The press is brutal with women in political scandals. Either you control the story, or it controls you. Naomi looked down at her son's peaceful face. After everything she'd sacrificed to bring Lucas to justice, the thought of being defined by his crimes felt like another violation. There's something else you should know, Catherine added. Lucas made calls before the wedding. He's been preparing to challenge you for custody once the baby arrived. A cold fear gripped Naomi's heart. He doesn't even want James. He made that abundantly clear. What he wants is control, Catherine said, a flash of personal understanding crossing her face. And leverage. A child gives him both. The three women fell silent as a nurse entered to check Naomi's vitals, the strange tableau they created drawing a curious glance. New mother, FBI agent, and abandoned bride still in her wedding gown. Once they were alone again, Naomi asked the question that had been gnawing at her. How much did you know, Catherine, about the investigation? Not enough, Catherine admitted. Dad told me Lucas was being looked into for financial irregularities. I thought the wedding delay he suggested was just political timing. Her composed exterior cracked slightly. I didn't know about the other women, about what happened in hotel room 412. The reference to the hotel room, where Lucas had allegedly pushed a campaign volunteer down a flight of stairs when she threatened to expose their affair, hung heavy in the air. She lost her baby, Naomi said quietly. The campaign paid her medical bills and called it a settlement for a workplace accident. I found the paperwork when I was organizing his office. Catherine closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this confirmation. And that's when you started keeping records? That's when I started making copies, Naomi corrected. Every transaction, every text, every suspicious meeting. I didn't know what I'd do with it all, but I knew someday I'd need proof. Agent Carter straightened. The evidence Naomi provided was crucial, but we need to discuss security going forward. Lucas has powerful friends who won't appreciate his downfall. As if summoned by her words, Naomi's hospital room phone rang. The nurse had brought in earlier, explaining that a call was being forwarded from the main desk. Naomi answered cautiously. Hello, Ms. Walker. The voice was smooth, cultured, immediately recognizable. Senator Maxwell Ward, Lucas's political mentor and the power broker behind his rapid rise. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your performance tonight. Truly impressive. Naomi's eyes darted to Agent Carter, who immediately moved closer. "What do you want, Senator?" Naomi asked, keeping her voice steady. "To offer some friendly advice." His tone remained pleasant, but the threat underneath was unmistakable. Political scandals have many casualties. Innocent ones. Children grow up with Google searches revealing their parents' worst moments. "Are you threatening my son?" Naomi's voice hardened as maternal protectiveness surged through her. "On the contrary, I'm suggesting there might be a path forward that benefits everyone. Lucas made mistakes, serious ones, but a lengthy, public trial serves no one's interests, especially not your child's." Agent Carter gestured for the phone, but Naomi held up one finger, instinct telling her to hear the senator out. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked. "A quiet plea deal. Lucas resigns from public life, makes restitution for any financial irregularities, and in exchange, certain more inflammatory allegations remain sealed." Senator Ward paused. "Additionally, a generous trust would be established for your son's future." "Very generous. You want me to recant my testimony?" Naomi translated. "To protect the party from scandal. I want to protect a child from growing up in the shadow of his father's disgrace." Ward countered smoothly. "Think about it, Ms. Walker. I'll be in touch tomorrow." The line went dead before she could respond. Naomi relayed the conversation to Agent Carter and Catherine, whose expressions grew increasingly troubled. "Maxwell Ward doesn't make idle suggestions," Catherine said. "If he's personally involved, the party machinery is mobilizing to contain this. Can they suppress federal charges?" Naomi asked Agent Carter. "They can apply pressure in the right places," the agent admitted reluctantly. "High-profile political cases are vulnerable to interference. Witnesses change stories, evidence gets mishandled, prosecutors receive career-advancing offers elsewhere." Naomi looked down at James, now sleeping peacefully. Everything she'd done, the months of careful documentation, the humiliating performance at Lucas's wedding, had been to ensure justice and protect her son from a father who viewed him as an inconvenience. Now that justice seemed suddenly precarious. "I won't be bought off," she said firmly. "Or threatened." Catherine reached out, hesitantly touching Naomi's arm. The first moment of genuine connection between them. "Then we stand together. My father may have used us both in his political chess game, but we can choose our own next moves." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Walker, there's a delivery for you at the front desk. Security has cleared it." Minutes later, the nurse returned with a small box wrapped in silver paper. Naomi opened it cautiously to find a tiny silver baby rattle and a note card bearing the Ward family crest. Asterisk, a gift for the newest member of this unfortunate situation. Children deserve to be protected from their parents' mistakes. All their parents' mistakes. MW asterisk as the implied threat registered. Another contraction seized Naomi. Not from childbirth this time, but from a rush of postpartum bleeding that quickly soaked through her hospital sheets. "She's hemorrhaging." The nurse hit the emergency call button as medical staff rushed in. The last thing Naomi saw before losing consciousness was Agent Carter securing the silver rattle in an evidence bag, and Catherine reaching for baby James, cradling him protectively as chaos erupted around them. In the hallway outside, a man in hospital scrubs watched through the window, speaking quietly into his phone. "Complications have arisen. The situation may resolve itself, naturally." On the other end, Senator Ward's voice was cold. "Excellent. And the child?" "Currently with the Hammond girl." "Shall we intervene?" "Not yet," Ward replied. "Let's see how this plays out. Will Naomi survive this sudden medical emergency? Is Senator Ward behind her complications? And what are his true motives? Comment your beliefs below and subscribe if you're new here." The steady beep of cardiac monitors pulled Naomi back to consciousness. Her vision swam into focus, revealing an ICU room and the concerned face of Dr. Reeves. "Welcome back," the doctor said, checking Naomi's vitals. "You gave us quite a scare." Memory returned in fragments. The hemorrhaging, the rush of medical personnel, the silver rattle with its veiled threat. "My baby," Naomi whispered, throat raw from intubation. "Your son is perfectly healthy," Dr. Reeves assured her. "He's in the nursery, Underguard." "Underguard, Agent Carter's orders." The doctor lowered her voice. "She believes your bleeding wasn't entirely natural." Cold fear washed over Naomi as the implications registered. Are you saying your 4 bag showed signs of tampering? Dr. Reeves confirmed. A blood thinner was introduced into your system shortly after delivery. If the nurse hadn't noticed your excessive bleeding so quickly, she left the sentence unfinished. Attempted murder. The words hung unspoken between them. Catherine Hammond, Naomi asked, remembering the bride's surprising protectiveness toward James. She hasn't left the hospital, been alternating between the waiting room and the nursery. Dr. Reeves hesitated. There's something else. While you were unconscious, Governor Hammond had your room swept for surveillance. They found this. She held up a small evidence bag containing what looked like a button. It was in the silver rattle. Recording device, according to the security team. Naomi stared at the device. The violation of this most intimate space. Her hospital room. Her newborn's first hours. Igniting something beyond fear or anger. A cold, clear purpose crystallized within her. I need my phone, she said, and I need to see Agent Carter immediately. You're suggesting a sitting U.S. Senator orchestrated an attempt on your life? Agent Carter stood at the window of Naomi's new, secure hospital room, her expression troubled. The timing is too convenient, Naomi insisted. Ward calls with thinly veiled threats, sends a gift containing surveillance equipment, and minutes later, I nearly bleed out. Catherine paced the small room, still wearing yesterday's clothes, though she'd exchanged her wedding dress for borrowed scrubs. Maxwell Ward practically owns the state GOP. He handpicked Lucas for advancement years ago, before Lucas even announced his first campaign. But attempted murder? Agent Carter shook her head. That's several leaps beyond political damage control. Naomi struggled to sit up straighter. You need to check Lucas's financial records again. Look for connections to Ward's foundation. We've been through his finances with a fine-tooth comb, Carter replied. There's nothing linking Ward directly to the embezzlement. Not directly, Naomi conceded. But what about indirectly? The Heritage Foundation fundraisers? The annual hunting retreats? As she spoke, pieces of a puzzle she'd observed for years began clicking together. Lucas once mentioned that Ward taught him the Washington two-step, how money moves between campaigns without leaving fingerprints. Agent Carter's phone buzzed with a text. Her expression shifted as she read it. They found something in Lucas's wedding suite. A burner phone with encrypted messages. The tech team just broke through. And Catherine urged. It's not just financial crimes, Carter said grimly. It looks like Lucas was gathering compromising material on political rivals for Ward. Photos, recordings, financial dirt. The real currency in Washington. Blackmail, Naomi whispered, the scope of the conspiracy expanding before her eyes. A knock interrupted them. Governor Hammond entered, his authoritative presence filling the small room despite his obvious exhaustion. The situation has escalated, he announced without preamble. Senator Ward has called an emergency press conference for noon. His office is floating that he'll address false accusations against a protege. He's going to discredit the case publicly, Agent Carter concluded. Frame it as a political hit job. Worse, the governor said. My sources say he's planning to paint this as a conspiracy between my office and a vindictive ex-wife. He has documentation suggesting I orchestrated the entire investigation to eliminate a political rival. Catherine stared at her father. Did you? The governor's hesitation spoke volumes. My interest in Lucas's downfall wasn't entirely about justice, he admitted. But the crimes are real, the evidence legitimate. Convenient timing, though, Naomi observed coldly. Using my trauma for political theater. Governor Hammond met her gaze directly. I utilized an opportunity, yes. But I didn't create the situation. Lucas did that himself through his crimes. The tension in the room thickened until Catherine broke it. None of this explains who tampered with Naomi's four. Actually, it might. Agent Carter held up her phone, displaying a grainy security image. Hospital security identified this man entering the maternity ward shortly before Naomi's hemorrhaging. Ryan Chambers, former military, currently employed by a security firm with ties to Maxwell Ward, the governor finished. He uses them for special projects. Naomi absorbed this confirmation of her suspicions, the pieces forming a terrifying picture. This was never just about Lucas's financial crimes, was it? This is about something bigger that Ward is trying to hide. Governor Hammond's expression grew grave. Maxwell Ward has been kingmaker in this state for 30 years. The number of officials who owe him their careers, the amount of legislation he's influenced. He shook his head. Lucas was just a cog in a much larger machine. A nurse entered with James, perfect and oblivious in his hospital swaddle. As Naomi took her son, a sudden, terrible clarity washed over her. "The recordings," she said, looking up sharply. "The blackmail material Lucas gathered for Ward. Where is it now?" Agent Carter's expression shifted. "According to the encrypted messages in a safe deposit box. Insurance, Lucas called it." Which means Governor Hammond concluded that Lucas Grant has just become the most dangerous man in the state to Maxwell Ward. A liability rather than an asset. Catherine moved to the window, peering through the blinds at the media trucks already gathering outside the hospital. "They're going to try to destroy you both before Lucas can make a deal," she said quietly. "Turn public opinion against you, undermine the prosecution's case, paint you as unstable Naomi. Let them try," Naomi replied, a new steel in her voice as she cradled her son. "I've already lost everything once. I have nothing left to take except James, and I will burn down the world before I let them near him." As if responding to his mother's fierce declaration, James began to cry, a sound that cut through the strategic discussion, reminding everyone of the innocent life at the center of this escalating war. "There's one option we haven't discussed," Catherine said suddenly, turning from the window. "One that neither Ward nor my father would anticipate." All eyes turned to the former bride as she outlined a plan so audacious, so unexpected, that even the cynical Agent Carter seemed taken aback. "It's insane," the governor protested when she finished. "Politically suicidal." "Which is exactly why it might work," Naomi replied, a grim smile forming as she considered Catherine's proposal. "No one would expect us to go on the offensive together." As the adults debated the merits and risks of Catherine's strategy, none noticed the tiny blinking light on the hospital phone, a second surveillance device that had escape detection, transmitting every word of their conversation to a very interested listener. What shocking strategy has Catherine proposed? And who is listening to their supposedly secure conversation? Comment your theories below and subscribe to see how these unlikely allies prepare to strike back against the state's most powerful men. Allegations against Lucas Grant are the desperate fabrications of a mentally unstable woman, enabled by a governor abusing his power for political gain. Senator Maxwell Ward's voice boomed from the hospital room television, his silver-haired gravitas projecting trustworthiness as cameras flashed around him. He stood at the podium like a patriarch defending family honor, his decades of political power evident in every measured gesture. What we witnessed at that wedding reception was not justice, but a coordinated character assassination, Ward continued. Ms. Walker's documented history of emotional instability during pregnancy, combined with her bitterness over Mr. Grant choosing to end their relationship, created a perfect storm of vengeance. Naomi clutched James closer as Ward held up medical documents, her private medical records somehow in his possession. Prenatal depression, Ward read solemnly. Paranoid ideation. Recommendation for psychiatric evaluation. These clinical observations were made by Ms. Walker's own physicians. "Those are forgeries," Naomi whispered, but the damage was already spreading across every news channel, social media platform, and political blog in real time. Catherine muted the television. "He's playing the unstable woman card." Classic. With disturbing effectiveness, Governor Hammond added grimly, "My office is being flooded with calls from supporters questioning our involvement." Agent Carter entered the room, her expression more severe than usual. "We have bigger problems. The judge reviewing the evidence has concerns about chain of custody. The prosecutor's office is suddenly backpedaling on charges, suggesting we reassess the strength of our case." Ward's influence, Governor Hammond concluded. "There's more." Carter lowered her voice. "Lucas is being offered a deal. Minimal charges in exchange for testimony against you, Governor, claiming you coerced Naomi into making false allegations to sabotage his campaign." The room fell silent as the scope of their predicament became clear. Senator Ward wasn't just discrediting Naomi. He was systematically dismantling the entire case, flipping the narrative to make Lucas the victim and her the villain. "What about the hospital security footage?" Naomi asked. "The man who tampered with my mysteriously corrupted," Carter replied. And the nurse who reported the tampering has suddenly taken an unplanned vacation to her home country. Catherine paced the small room. They're erasing evidence and witnesses. Standard operating procedure, Governor Hammond said wearily. This is why most whistleblowers against powerful men ultimately fail. The system protects its own. A hospital administrator appeared at the door, visibly uncomfortable. Ms. Walker, I'm sorry, but we've received complaints about the security presence disrupting other patients. Hospital policy requires. Requires what? Naomi interrupted. Removing protection from a woman who nearly died from tampering by a politically connected assailant. The administrator's gaze dropped. The hospital board has concerns about being drawn into a political controversy. They've requested the FBI presence be relocated outside the building. Agent Carter stepped forward. That's not happening. Then I've been instructed to initiate discharge procedures. The administrator placed papers on the bedside table. Ms. Walker has physically recovered sufficiently for outpatient care. After he left, Naomi struggled to her feet despite the others' protests. This is just the beginning. They'll isolate us, strip away protection, then pick us off one by one. You need to rest, Catherine urged. You nearly died yesterday, which is exactly what they wanted, Naomi replied, gathering her strength. Ward is accelerating his timeline. We need to implement your plan now, before the hospital room door burst open, revealing two uniformed officers and a woman in a business suit. Naomi Walker? The woman asked, though she clearly knew the answer. I'm Laura Simmons from Child Protective Services. We've received concerning reports about your fitness as a mother, given your mental health status and involvement in criminal matters. The blood drained from Naomi's face as the woman continued. I have an emergency custody order signed by Judge Raymond Wilson, removing the minor child James Walker from your care, pending evaluation. That's impossible, Agent Carter interjected. On what grounds? Medical endangerment, Simmons replied coolly. Exposure to a criminal conspiracy. And suspected substance abuse affecting judgment. Substance abuse? Naomi's voice cracked with disbelief. Simmons held up lab results. Your blood work shows traces of antipsychotic medication not prescribed to you, combined with painkillers at concerning levels. The combination suggests impaired decision-making capacity. The four, Catherine realized aloud. Whoever tampered with it wasn't just trying to harm you. They were setting you up. Agent Carter positioned herself between the CPS worker and Naomi. This order requires review. The chain of evidence suggests Agent Carter. A new voice interrupted as FBI Assistant Director Phillips entered the room. You're being reassigned effective immediately. This case has been transferred to White Collar Crimes Division. Carter's professional mask slipped momentarily. Sir, with respect, there's clear evidence of witness tampering, attempted murder, evidence which is currently under internal review for procedural violations. Phillips cut her off. Return to headquarters for reassignment. That's an order. The room seemed to close in around Naomi as she clutched James tighter. You can't take my baby. He needs me. Ms. Walker, Simmons said with rehearsed sympathy. This is temporary while we investigate these serious concerns. The child will be placed in appropriate care. What care? Naomi demanded. Who exactly gets custody of my newborn? Simmons hesitated just long enough for Governor Hammond to connect the dots. It's a private placement, isn't it? He asked sharply. Not standard foster care. Someone specific has already been approved. Before Simmons could answer, Naomi's hospital room phone rang. With everyone's attention diverted, Catherine answered, her expression shifting from confusion to shock as she listened. It's for you, she said to Naomi, something urgent in her eyes. Naomi took the receiver, aware of the room watching her. Ms. Walker. The voice was unmistakable. Lucas. I hope you're enjoying the consequences of your performance. Lucas, she breathed, hatred crystallizing within her. You're about to lose our son, he continued, satisfaction evident in every word. Judge Wilson has approved temporary placement with my parents while your mental fitness is evaluated. Convenient timing, isn't it? You won't get away with this, Naomi whispered. Lucas laughed softly. I already have. The case against me is crumbling. Senator Ward has offered me a position on his reform committee once this unfortunate misunderstanding is resolved. And you'll You'll be lucky if they let you have supervised visitation once the psychiatric evaluation is complete. The evidence is being reinterpreted as we speak. Amazing how the same financial records can tell different stories depending on who's analyzing them. His voice hardened. You should have taken the deal when Ward offered it. As Lucas spoke, Naomi noticed something on the hospital phone. The same tiny blinking light she'd seen earlier. The surveillance device. Whoever was listening now heard Lucas openly admitting the conspiracy. She needed to keep him talking. How did you do it? Naomi asked, her voice deliberately louder. The tampering. Was that your idea or Ward's? I don't know what you're talking about. Lucas replied too quickly. Though it's fortunate those medications showed up in your system. Further proof of your instability. And Judge Wilson? How much did Ward pay him to sign that custody order without a hearing? Lucas chuckled. Wilson has been in Ward's pocket for years. Political. Donations, a vacation home conveniently purchased by a shell company. The usual arrangements. As Lucas continued detailing the conspiracy, Naomi caught Agent Carter's eye, nodding meaningfully toward the phone's blinking light. Carter noticed immediately, her expression shifting as she recognized the opportunity. You're recording this call. Lucas suddenly realized, his tone changing. Pointless. No judge will admit it after your performance at my wedding. You're burned, Naomi. No credibility left. Perhaps, Naomi agreed. But you forget one thing, Lucas. What's that? I'm not the only one who knows what you've done. She looked directly at the CPS worker as she delivered her final line. Ask Senator Ward about hotel room 412. Ask him who really pushed that girl down the stairs while you watched. Ask him why he needed her silence so badly. The line went dead. Silence filled the hospital room as the implications of Naomi's words registered with everyone present. It was Assistant Director Phillips who broke the tension, his bureaucratic certainty suddenly less confident. These custody proceedings require proper protocol. Perhaps we should verify the placement details before removing the child. Simmons shifted uncomfortably. My instructions were quite clear. Your instructions appear to be part of a documented conspiracy, Agent Carter interrupted, regaining her professional footing. I suggest you contact your superiors for clarification while we sort this out. As the standoff continued, Catherine slipped from the room unnoticed. By the time anyone realized she was gone, the governor's daughter was already executing the contingency plan they had prepared, one that would either save them all or destroy any chance of justice. Outside the hospital, reporters gathered as word spread of the CPS intervention. Among them stood a man with a satellite uplink and direct connection to every major news outlet in the country, a man Catherine Hammond had secretly contacted the night before. This is Richard Klein with breaking news, the veteran investigative journalist began, on what may be the largest political corruption scandal this state has ever seen. Inside Naomi's room, the television suddenly switched from Senator Ward's press conference to Klein's broadcast, catching everyone's attention. Obtained exclusively by this network, Klein continued. Recordings from Lucas Grant's own security system reveal Senator Maxwell Ward's direct involvement in criminal activity, witness tampering, and what appears to be an orchestrated attempt to frame a new mother for mental instability. As the color drained from Assistant Director Phillips' face, Naomi realized the game had changed again, but whether it was enough to save her and her child remained to be seen. The darkest hour had arrived, with forces more powerful than she had imagined aligned against her. Yet in that darkness, a small flame of resistance burned, kindled by an unlikely alliance and fueled by a mother's determination to protect her child at any cost. This is Richard Klein continuing our breaking coverage of what we're now calling the wedding singer conspiracy. Every screen in the hospital displayed the same broadcast. Klein standing outside with Catherine Hammond beside him, still in her borrowed scrubs, her abandoned wedding now a distant memory. Catherine Hammond, you were supposed to be Lucas Grant's bride. Instead, you're here supporting his ex-wife. What? Because truth matters more than politics, Catherine replied, her voice steady. And because what's happening inside this hospital right now is nothing short of criminal. The camera panned to show federal agents escorting CPS worker Laura Simmons from a building, her face hidden from reporters. Inside Naomi's room, the atmosphere had transformed. Agent Carter had reclaimed authority. Assistant Director Phillips was on a tense phone call in the corner, and Governor Hammond watched the broadcast with calculating eyes. "It was a setup," he murmured. "Catherine knew exactly what she was doing." "We both did," Naomi replied, cradling James as she watched her unlikely ally on screen. "The question is whether it's enough." Her answer came moments later when Richard Klein played the audio, not just from Lucas's damning phone call, but for what appeared to be dozens of recorded conversations between Lucas, Senator Ward, and Judge Wilson spanning months. "The recordings were delivered anonymously to our network," Klein explained, along with financial records showing payments to key officials involved in suppressing evidence against Lucas Grant. The hospital room door opened to reveal a man Naomi had never expected to see again, FBI Director Thomas Reynolds. "Ms. Walker," he said formally, "I understand my agency has failed you significantly." Before Naomi could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Asterisk, "Don't trust anyone yet. More coming. Hold strong." Asterisk on screen, Catherine was now holding up documents. These records show Senator Ward personally approved payments to silence a woman Lucas Grant allegedly assaulted, a woman who subsequently lost her unborn child. The broadcast cut to a recorded interview with a young woman, her face in shadow, but her voice clear as she detailed her relationship with Lucas and the night in hotel room 412 that ended with her being pushed downstairs while Lucas watched, and Senator Ward made calls to clean up the situation. Director Reynolds' phone rang. His expression darkened as he listened. "I understand, Mr. President." "Yes, immediately." He ended the call, facing the room with new resolve. "The White House has ordered an independent investigation into Senator Ward, Judge Wilson, and all officials involved in this case." He turned to Agent Carter. "You're reinstated as lead, with direct reporting to my office." Outside the hospital, media vehicles multiplied as the story exploded nationally. In Washington, politicians scrambled to distance themselves from Senator Ward. And in a federal holding cell, Lucas Grant realized the protection he had counted on was evaporating. Naomi looked down at her son, then at the chaos unfolding around them, a chaos she had helped orchestrate through one perfect, terrible song. "It's working," she whispered to James. "They thought Mommy was powerless. They were wrong. Will the evidence be enough to secure justice?" 3 weeks later, Naomi entered the federal courthouse with her head held high, baby James secured against her chest in a sling. The national media parted before her, cameras flashing as the woman they now called the singing witness approached the stand. Inside, Lucas sat at the defendant's table, hollow-eyed and diminished without his political armor. Their eyes met briefly, his filled with hatred, hers with something far more devastating: indifference. "Ms. Walker," the federal prosecutor began, "please describe for the court how you obtained the recordings that exposed Senator Ward's involvement." Naomi leaned toward the microphone. "I didn't obtain them. Catherine Hammond did." The courtroom doors opened as if on cue, and Catherine entered with a small silver flash drive in her hand. Behind her walked her father, the governor, and behind him, to audible gasps, walked Senator Ward's own wife, Patricia. Catherine discovered that Lucas had installed recording devices throughout their future home. Naomi testified, her voice steady. "Not for security, but to gather leverage against anyone who visited, including Senator Ward." Catherine took the stand next, explaining how she had found the hidden server while preparing to move into the house Lucas had purchased for their married life. "When I confronted my father about his suspicions regarding Lucas, he admitted the investigation but denied having any actual recordings," Catherine testified. "That's when I realized Lucas must have evidence no one else knew about." The final witness that day was Patricia Ward, elegant in her designer suit, as she calmly detailed 30 years of her husband's criminal enterprises. "Maxwell kept records of everyone he controlled," she explained, her aristocratic voice carrying throughout the hushed courtroom. "Insurance," he called it. "I kept my own insurance as well." By day's end, Senator Ward had been taken into custody, his empire crumbling as associates rushed to cut deals. Judge Wilson had resigned in disgrace, and Lucas, watching his powerful protector fall, had finally accepted a plea deal that would keep him in prison for 15 years. Outside the courthouse, Catherine and Naomi faced the press together, the jilted bride and the discarded wife, now united in an unlikely alliance that had brought down the state's most powerful man. "Was this about revenge?" a reporter called out. Naomi looked down at James, then back at the cameras. This was about justice, and ensuring that powerful men understand one crucial truth. Women remember everything. As the media swarmed around them, Catherine leaned close to Naomi. They'll come after us next, you know. The political machine doesn't forgive women who speak up. Naomi smiled for the first time in months, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Let them try. I still have a few verses left to sing. Behind them, Governor Hammond watched with calculated pride and growing unease. His daughter and Naomi Walker had proven themselves more formidable than anyone anticipated, a realization that left him wondering who would control this new narrative moving forward, and whether his own secrets would remain buried. What unexpected role will Governor Hammond play in the aftermath? And what new chapter begins for Naomi and Catherine? 6 months later, the charity gala buzzed with the state's political elite, though the power dynamics had shifted dramatically since the wedding singer scandal rocked the establishment. Governor Hammond remained in office, though visibly humbled by his daughter's moral stand and the subsequent ethics investigations into his administration. Naomi entered the ballroom confidently, wearing an elegant emerald gown that complemented her now-recovered strength. No longer the desperate ex-wife, she had transformed into something far more formidable, a woman with both voice and power. "There she is," whispered attendees as she passed, "the one who brought down Ward and Grant." At the center table sat Catherine Hammond, who rose to embrace Naomi warmly. Their unlikely friendship had blossomed into a powerful alliance that continued reshaping the political landscape through their newly established accountability project, which supported whistleblowers against powerful figures. "Is James with your mother?" Catherine asked. "Yes, though he's growing so fast, I barely recognize him each morning." Naomi smiled, the joy of motherhood now untainted by fear. The foundation's first shelter opens next month. They had channeled the settlement money from Ward's estate into creating safe houses for women escaping powerful abusers, converting Lucas's campaign donations into protection for those like the woman from Hotel Room 412, who now served as the program's director. The evening's highlight approached as Naomi was called to the stage. The audience fell silent, perhaps remembering another performance that had changed everything. 6 months ago, I stood on a different stage, using my voice because it was the only weapon I had left, Naomi began. Today, I stand before you not as a victim seeking justice, but as a woman helping others find their own voices. From her seat, Catherine watched with pride while her father observed with complex emotions. Respect mingled with wariness for the political force these women had become without his orchestration. After the speech, as Naomi exited through the grand foyer, a familiar silver-haired figure stepped into her path. Patricia Ward, now divorced from the disgraced senator, but still maintaining her social position through careful maneuvering. "Impressive transformation," Patricia said, studying Naomi. "Though you should watch your back. Men like Maxwell aren't fully destroyed, even from prison." Naomi met her gaze steadily. "I'm not afraid anymore, Mrs. Ward. That's the one gift Lucas gave me. He took everything until I had nothing left to lose." As Patricia walked away, Governor Hammond approached with uncharacteristic humility. "My daughter speaks very highly of you, as does the president's chief of staff." Naomi smiled politely. "Political rehabilitation, Governor, or genuine admiration?" "Perhaps a bit of both," he admitted, "and perhaps a job offer. The Justice Department needs someone with first-hand experience in how corruption actually works." As she considered his words, Naomi's phone chimed with a message from her mother. A video of James laughing in his crib, reaching for the mobile above, a mobile made of silver stars, each representing a woman who had found her voice. The perfect symbol for a new beginning built from the ashes of betrayal. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful narratives about justice, transformation, and finding strength in unexpected places. Comment below with which character's journey resonated with you most.